I mean, where do you stand in this? At the moment, currently at the weekend, the clubs, Liverpool, Leeds, Man City, Chelsea and Manchester United, cannot select Fabinho, Alisson, Firmino, Rafinha, Ederson, Gabriel Jesus, Thiago Silva and Fred.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, we know where that's going to land. We've discussed this, frequently. It's not the government's job to let these various federations that are fighting like cats in a sack to come to some sort of pragmatic solution, which is all driven by money. The reasons why FIFA want, a World Cup tournament to be played every 2 years is not for the well-being of the players, it's for the well-being of the finances around football. And the reasons these World Cup qualifiers are playing out the way they are is because there's a lack of communication, a lack of courtesy, a lack of professionalism. It can't be the government's job. We can't suggest that we want sports to be a role model and a leader and an inspirer of people. We want football players to take the lead to educate society about how they should and shouldn't behave. But by the way, you don't have to abide by the rules everyone else has to. You get special dispensation to go and play an international tournament because the government will relax quarantine rules simply so you can go and do something that could have been better organised, better structured and put into play far more effectively than the ridiculous, laughable, contemptible set of circumstances we find ourselves in now.
Yeah, but football is showing that it can't solve it itself.
Well, no, it hasn't shown it can't.
Cue the government.
No, it hasn't shown it can't. It's shown it won't. And if you allow the government to get involved in the politics of sport, be careful what you open the door to that one. That is the very last thing anybody in their right mind should ever want, is a government to be involved in the jurisdiction of sport. And if you do want that, then you're outside of your mind.
But Jim, I believe the clubs have acted responsibly in this by not wanting to send their players because they've looked at COVID and they thought, well, OK, we're not going to send them halfway around the world, all these variants of COVID, risking bringing that back into our own game. And now it looks like FIFA are going to impose this ban on the players.
But the players are culpable. The clubs can act as responsibly as they want, but the regulations are what they are, and it comes down to the players to become, in some part, facilitatory to the solution. The players haven't been facilitatory to the solution; they've compounded the problem. They've exacerbated
one or two players have gone off and just ignored the clubs, haven't they? That's what's happening in the Spurs situation.
The Tottenham contingent. Ralph Hasenhüttl at Southampton's been interesting in this because he says the clubs have got to continue to block players from internationals if they have to quarantine on return.
That's the response.
I think in the moment it's definitely a problem to send the players all over the world to play some games somewhere. As soon as you have to have the quarantine issue, you must definitely block players from going somewhere, and because otherwise you lose them for a long time. Like all the Brazilian, Argentinian players are now out. You can imagine for a club what it means, this is a situation that is definitely not helpful for the players. The player want to play for the international, this is for sure. He also want to play for us as a club. You have to be possible to find a solution where the player doesn't get under pressure, because in the end it's about the player and he has to quarantine, and this is what we have to solve this issue.
You see, that's exactly what I was meaning, Simon. Football can't solve this problem. The managers are defiant by not releasing the players.
It's not up to the manager, though, is it? It's up to the club. The club manager is just an employee. The fact of the matter is there are simple solutions, neutral facilities, neutral environments. Think outside of the box. If these games weren't played in South America and they were played in a neutral environment, which wasn't a red list country, we wouldn't be having this discussion, would we? We've looked at it from the upside, from the up and bottom of it. You've got the FIFA turning around and actually saying, I believe, that they'll let Richarlison play for Everton because Everton were nice in the summer and let him play. Have you ever heard such inconsistent, puritanical, self-serving, sanctimonious drivel? Unless, of course, you listen to Amanda Staveley on the purchase of Newcastle. That's a different discussion. But the reality of it is...
There's no need for that one.
I know it was a bit on the left side, but look at the reality of it. How can you look at this situation and say, from what we understand, these players, Martin, if they flew into these countries, were going to have to quarantine when they flew into the countries. And some people say, well, no, hang on. If they're Brazilian nationals, they won't have to. But they've been in the UK.
Yeah,
they've been in the UK, so they still have to
rules.
quarantine. So they can fly out to Brazil and quarantine for 14 days, couldn't even play in the bleeding games, and then come back and quarantine for another 10 days. And somehow we expect the government to get involved to solve football's problem. Let football eat itself. Let it fall apart. It's not the government's responsibility to do this. This is ridiculous.
What would you have done?
Well, it seems sensible. It seems
you would have stayed home.
I would, but I do like the bigger idea of playing in countries which are green flag countries, where then you're taking that element of risk away, and then you get that fairness. Trying to find a fair way through this is really very difficult.
What is the way through it? I mean, Simon, at the moment, this is still one muddled mess. We talk about the cricket this morning. It's just as crazy.
Well, the way through it is for FIFA to step off. The Brazilian Federation are asking FIFA to implement the 5-day rule. It's incumbent upon the football clubs in the UK that started this fight. If they didn't want to have a fight, let the players go. If you do want to have a fight, then have the fight. Get off your stool. Don't just stand there like the ESL clubs did, which was put their flag up, then put their flag down within 30 seconds of deciding they're not going to do something. Have the fight. Take it outside of the arbitration of FIFA. Turn around and do what Man City did, was we don't recognise UEFA's authority. We're going to go to the Court of Arbitration of Sport. Right, do one FIFA. We'll take this. We'll play our players. We'll put an appeal into Court of Arbitration of Sport so the problem goes away immediately.
Yeah.
And then we'll see what the Court of Arbitration of Sport says about this.
Well, we'll see. This weekend we'll see, won't we? Because Man City, I think, are determined to play their
and
players.
so are Liverpool.
And then in FIFA, it throws back to FIFA as whether they're going to introduce those sanctions.
But
What happens to the result then this weekend, Jim?
Well, it's an even bigger conundrum. How about this?
Well, under the rules, it has to be a forfeit.
But how about
3-0, doesn't it?
How about this one from conundrum? If Leeds play their Brazilian player and Liverpool play their Brazilian player, who are they going to forfeit it in favour of? Who's going to get the 3-0 result?
Yeah.
Neither one of them, because they've both breached the FIFA protocol. It's nonsense.
What are we going to see this weekend, Simon? We're going to see these players play.
If these clubs have 1 ounce of substance and backbone, they will be playing these players and calling it upon a solution for the October fixtures. This is where the next problem comes in the international break. Now, what's happened now has to be resolved by sensible, cool heads, stopping being entranced in their positions.
By the government.
No, not by the government.
It will be.
The government doesn't have any jurisdiction.
I think there's talk already for the October games.
Yes, I understand that. If the government are going to relax quarantine rules to allow football to
behave...
the issue. If the government are going to relax quarantine rules to allow football to behave abominably, I don't know what do we say about that?
But football's not sorting this problem, Simon. Someone's got to sort it.
Yeah, but it's not the government's jurisdiction. You
But
either have healthcare rules or you don't.
FIFA can't activate this 5-day rule, not in the circumstances for which it's been done. It's been done on the view of safety. And there must have been a caveat or other clause within this contract. When FIFA set it, of course, we didn't have COVID as we have it now.
Well, FIFA only... I tell you what, do you know why FIFA are triggering it? They only trigger it at the request of the federation. The Brazilian Federation have asked FIFA to implement the 5-day rule. If the Brazilian Federation sit down, shut their traps, this wouldn't be instant.
But Richarlison don't affect him, though, because he's been good to Brazil when we don't know.
Correct, because he played in the Olympics at a different time in a season at a time of the year when the players weren't requested back by their clubs at a different event. But he's okay. But Everton blocked him from going to play in the World Cup qualifiers. It's nonsense.
It's total nonsense.
Nonsense.
What's your bet? Do we see Fabinho, Alisson, Firmino, Rafinha, Edison, Jesus, Thiago Silva and Fred? Do we see them?
If I was running one of those clubs, absolutely.
Yeah.
Jim White and Simon Jordan. Monday to Thursday morning, 10 till 1. On AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.